Oh, is this a pressure?
Yeah.
Dr. Aractingi, CIO 4.
Well, I don't know how many of you I see familiar faces, but I saw more names on the text saying they're coming. But at least I know 3 or 4 familiar faces.
I'm your student.
How come students are on this side?
I required my class to be here.
Oh, well, I see that they're all here.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I meant for this one to be more interactive. Last year, it was kind of that way too. But I also prepared 2 things. One is an overview of IT, because some folks asked about that. So it's just a short one. So just in case we don't have a lot of interaction, I can go over those slides. The other one, this will be good also for visitors and guests. The other thing is we did CIO Forum last semester for 3 months or 4 months. I'm planning 1 or 2 topics for this semester before the end, maybe one this month. We could have another one before, but likely to have at least one every semester, instead of one's preparation needed. So I would like to hear some thoughts, if you know of other people also who have thoughts, for topics for the remaining of those CIO sessions, and we continue to do those. So those are kind of 2 things on the side. Let me ask, which programs are you from, for those that I don't know them personally? Where are you guys from? You're the
Forensics.
Yeah, I met you just a little earlier, right? Nick?
No, yeah. Digital forensics. Digital forensics.
And
Accounting.
accounting, business, and you're Tim. You're what?
Oh, I'm CIT.
You're CIT. And Frederick, you graduated.
CIT, I graduated this
Yeah.
semester.
Congrats. You're digital forensic. Well, we met also earlier a minute ago, right?
Yeah, digital forensics.
Digital forensics. And you're computer science. So I think at least we have one business. Maybe last time we had a few more MIS. So the first thing I'm going to ask is what I did also last year. How do you imagine student experience would change from IT perspective on university campus in the future, based on your experience today? I know in the past, a lot changed in the way of Wi-Fi, right? There's more dependence on Wi-Fi. So that was something I heard from students years ago, and it did happen really, that Wi-Fi is kind of the most used service that we have. The other one is mobile devices. You guys have smart mobile devices, so that's the big change. So something like that, what do you expect is also going to continue to happen?
A lot of programs are shifting to online programs. I know for accountancy, we have the master, like you can get your MBA online or the Master of Science in Accountancy online. And so I think more programs are going to be online with lockdown browsers and systems like that. So that kind of stuff almost becomes like infrastructural with what you do in college now. Having IT knowledge is almost like a must-have.
Yeah. Have you taken online class? Any one or more?
Yeah.
Blackboard, right, hours?
Mhm.
Marshall? Who else has taken online classes? Almost everybody took some kind of online class.
My whole master's was online.
Yeah, my whole doctorate was online, and I taught online, but I learned that not everyone, including myself, was prepared. I was not fully prepared for online class based on my expectation of, well, online class is flexible, I can do it asynchronously, I don't need to be connected. So it's kind of what I learned. So it needs not just technology preparation and infrastructure and whatever is needed, but also discipline, because you're kind of on your own. You have to discipline yourself in how you sit down and do the work and dedicate the time, especially in more of a dissertation style or thesis style, where you're on your own for multiple weeks and then you go submit a paper and then you only work the last few days. What else do you think would kind of change the way we do things.
I mean, one thing branching off, he said a lot of browser-based stuff. Textbooks as a service seem to be a bigger trend. We were saying earlier everything's becoming a service, but I know DFIA is moving to online virtualized labs, and CIT is getting Xi books where it's no longer a physical book. You just go online, work through stuff, and I'm sure accounting. I've heard about simulations you guys use.
Yeah, we use Connect, McGraw-Hill Connect, and
We use simulations in our class.
So sometimes even the same publishers, but it's just all online as a service instead of a physical book.
Yeah. Well, that concept of cloud computing, when we talk technically about everything as a service, is now moving beyond that. It's other services like textbooks.
Mhm.
And yeah, there's a thought that I just this morning wrote in a small report that I want to run by you also. But let's try to hear more ideas about what could change. What about in class? Like you go to classroom, what do you think could change in the way you're sitting in the classroom? Not just technology, of course, my interest is more technology, but I also wanted to kind of hear anything that could be different.
Like virtual attendance, kind of like webcam, AI.
Yeah, well, that's
We have that, it's in Blackboard.
Yeah.
well, I'm taking it to another level. My imagination is that maybe a hologram and VR, AR, where you see people sitting even if they're not. I mean, that could happen,
Right.
really.
Yeah, that's what I was meaning with the AI and
Yeah.
keeping track of attendance through that way.
We're already kind of doing that now. We're doing attendance as a service. You just have to check in using the top hat.
Right,
That
right.
service.
Yeah.
I just don't like the fact we have to pay money to get our attendance taken, personally.
You should have strongly worded letter with the top hat.
Where do academic affairs get them to pay for it?
Well, for now. That's part of what we wanted to hear. And that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess as a cloud service, that's not unreasonable to charge people for the service you're doing, but it's something we're used to having for free.
Right.
So
And I agree, and we all agree that a lot of those services that they start as a pilot initially, they may be for a fee, but at the end, as they become popular, it will be obvious that it should be a campus-wide license. It's still for a fee, but it's included in a way that everybody has access to it. Because some other faculty might want to do something like that, but either they're not aware of it, or they don't want to charge students for something, or whatever reason. But if it is available for everybody to use, paid centrally, like we pay it, not we.
It could come out of student fees, theoretically.
So theoretically, yeah, well, at the end, it's probably gonna be something paid indirectly, but there are so many things that the student fees are paying for. And if a service is popular, liked by students, liked by faculty, why not consider it a good investment of the student fees?
sure.
And the concept of the virtual attendance is not necessarily for tracking. I think the content delivery also could be in a virtual way. So if you're not in class, are you as engaged as if you are in class? And is the technology going to help, the immersive technology, the mixed reality, where you put a helmet on at home? It may not be helmet in a few years. It might be just small classes. That's going to put you almost like if you're sitting in the classroom. It might increase engagement.
Sheesh, did you see, there's an article that just came out about, I think it was in one of the Nordic countries, being like Sweden or Denmark, somewhere over there. They have a new helmet. You mentioned helmet. They have a helmet now that they're using for, it's a medical helmet, but they're using it for patients who have depression or other like mental illnesses. And you put the helmet on and it does some kind of like massage, wave therapy that actually changes like your neuron. I don't know the technical words for it, but just from a helmet that you would wear would change your
Facebook Insight.
Yeah. But one of the things that I started seeing already in higher is the application for using virtual reality to teach other. I mean, some things you don't need. You don't need a VR to learn how to write code, do some basic programming, but radiology is dramatically, at least it was, if I remember correctly, the first time I saw HoloLens in action. And the applications at that time looked like it's gonna be everywhere. Now it hasn't been. It hasn't been promoted or accessible for many reasons, I guess. One of them is the cost. We wanted to get one to see if students will start building applications. So that's one issue. The other issue is there are not a lot of applications that can be used. The one that I tried was actually Pearson building in beta, where for nursing students, they can see a patient who is actually starting experiencing the symptoms.
Yeah.
So you can have an actor, but they're not going to bleed, or they're not going to have
The emotional response and things.
yeah, or some physical things. You can't make them open, you can't have their eyes do certain things or their mouth become blue, or so there's certain things that you cannot have a person do. The computer can simulate the person.
Right.
But at the same time, they wanted, in part of that example that I looked at, they wanted you to go around and look if their back is good, or interact with them. So that was a good application. I have not seen it really out. So I think it's very expensive. They said several $1,000s a minute to build those videos, because they have to take it from all different angles, because you could be on one end and you could be on another end. You develop some 3D AR kind of work. You know how complex it is. Unless you build it as a design, a 3D model, it's very difficult.
Yeah, with the techniques I was using, it was very, very slow. And I feel like with the right software, that could be fixed. Like, it's not even hardware. A lot of it is just software. But mapping things into 3D space is getting good software for that. Either I don't know about it, or it's expensive, or it could just be I don't know about it.
It's coming off a long way. I mean, remember when this lab was built, millions of dollars to do virtualization. Now we do it on a much smaller scale. So, the culture will continue to evolve. That we're just not their culture.
Right. Well, there is a culture change. Because they're not inexpensive. Now HoloLens number 2, HoloLens, I think I shared it with the Game Design Guild, and I'm not sure if any of you in the CCDC saw that, but it is much better from resolution, from angle of AR and some of that, but it's still not there. It's still not fully immersive in a way that it's not lightweight. It's better, but it's not completely lightweight in a way you put it in a bucket, take it out, put it there, and it's still awkward to think that way, and it may never happen that way. That might be a reason for completely not use it as it is. Maybe it becomes something much easier to be done by different technologies, who knows? But I think, to your point, I think that could be certainly something that could incorporate the online style, so you have the flexibility of not traveling to the classroom but still be present. And some of those technologies can be used in class. So you can have people in class. Maybe some technologies will allow the same concept of 3D at a small middle school close by. I was involved in a project of putting the 3D, they're called Z-Space, if you're familiar with them. And those do not require a lot of gear. It's a passive glass, 3D glass, but it has sensors. Actually, they don't have sensors. The screen has sensors where the person is. So you move your head, and it knows that you have moved. So the screen is showing you the 3D and the VR So you don't need to put a helmet or even a 3D class, and it's not watching TV. Watching TV in 3D, you're not interacting. It doesn't know that you move this way or the other way, or if you're looking down to see the heart beating from the bottom. So the few experiences that I saw there, you have a heart beating, you can change the rate, the heart rate, and then you can, as it's working, you can slice it and take pieces of it and see all of them still beating the same way. And then you can take a camera and throw it in one of the veins, and it will start moving, and it will show you what the camera is seeing as you're moving it. And you can move your head and it will look the way you're looking. So it's not fully VR, so it's not completely around the room and immersive, but it's a step that does not require a big helmet. It's small glasses, but just because of the sensors and the stylus, where you can interact with it, it moved it up to a higher level of adoption. So now you find students just wanting to go. What I learned from the involvement with the principal, she did research, she actually did a whole study, and some students prefer that style. She actually found specific factors, specific profiles of students who are more engaged and they improved more dramatically than others in these type of environments. So, well, virtualization changed completely the whole digital forensics world. Imagine without virtualization, how much could you do the work you're doing now, or even the competition, everything that you're doing today, if without having access to virtual machines, it would have been very difficult and expensive. So that's a way, but the future might be a little more abstraction. So all of that could be completely outside the university campus.
So that's something I'm thinking about with regard to the machines on the campus. I've heard mixed things as to whether when you log into a machine in one building or another that it's actually virtualized and being streamed from somewhere else. So are there any computers that are virtualized or just...
Desktops?
Yeah.
Well, of course, almost all virtual.
But student machines, is
Student
that
machines.
all local still, or are there some of them that are like remotely logging into a virtual machine?
Well, speaking in general for higher ed technology, there are a lot virtualized. Marshall, we do not have virtualized for a few reasons. But I do like the concept. I actually, at one point, I asked for it, pushed for it, tried to see if we could do something there. But there are reasons that they worked in some places and didn't work in other places. And if you want, I can expand. The virtualization of desktop.
About that.
What is it?
I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Me too.
So virtual desktops, if you remember, for those who were, since the group is not big, you may not have a big overlap with the CIO forum on virtualization. It's taking the machine, you know how the servers are virtualized. The desktop virtualization is virtualizing the Windows or Mac or Linux desktop itself. Now I do have an actual desktop, fully functional with my configurations and Outlook running in Azure, which is a VM. So if I'm on my iPad, or my virtualization did not succeed in some places, is the high demand on power. Students need to check email. Who checks email on their phone? Who checks email during Collaborate to check email only? So that was one of the reasons most people virtualized labs. They thought students would come and check, they want to check their email, they open a virtual machine. That's not what people are using. The use of mobile devices reduced the need for those lab machines in general. So the lab machines that end up being for a few reasons. The reason people have lab machines or virtual machines. One of them is licensing. Like if you do not own a license to use on your own computer, you want to use, is there any software that you guys do not have access to license on your desktops or laptops that you come to university computers to use? Can you tell me about these?
Yeah, there's one, what is the one with flow charting and accounting? It's a Microsoft.
Like Visio? Microsoft
Yeah,
Visio?
That sounds
flowcharts would be
correct.
Visio.
Okay.
Visio or Power BI? Or
It sounds like it's
Visio?
Visio.
What about you?
I mean, we would have to come in to use our, like, SDK and stuff are actual, like, forensic software, is
Right.
when you have classroom licenses.
What else?
In gaming, it's not about licensing so much with Unreal and Unity and Maya as it is about power.
Exactly.
That a lot of students don't have it there.
So that's the second reason. I said there are two reasons.
Mhm.
One of them is licensing, the other one is power. Those are the two reasons why people come to a lab, not use their laptop or their desktop. So virtualization doesn't solve neither of these. Because the power, if you get into a virtual machine and you want to give it as much power as you give in the physical hardware, you didn't save. The value, if you remember, you actually asked that specific questions that gaming use 100% of CPU. The whole premise of virtualization is to play on the unused CPU cycles on the physical hardware. Right, so you have a physical hardware that you're using only at a time, you're only using 20, 30%. You may have a spike here and there, but you're only using 20, 30% on average. Most of us, if you put a CPU monitor, you may even find 8% with the current CPUs as the average. Yes, you have spikes of 100%. Gaming requires more. So for the machines like a web server or a small lightweight file server, you're not going to need a lot of CPU cycles. So you can put 20 of them on the same physical hardware, and they could all work together to not use 100%. They still use 80%. And if they need to, we talked about that in virtualization, they end up moving other machines and they dedicate more resources to it. So they still, if you do desktops, imagine if we have 4,000 VM, there are desktops for students, and the workload is all gaming. Nobody's just checking email. Nobody's going to remote to a VM in the cloud or in a virtual environment just to check email. They do it on their phone. Nobody's going to just browse the web to check on a schedule. So power was a reason, and licensing, most of the companies, they charge you for the installation. So if you create VMs in the cloud, but that is a trend that's going to certainly continue to happen. There will be use cases for it. But the other trend that I didn't hear from you much, but I think you probably agree, is the BYOD, bring your own device, the student ownership. Students here, we did a survey and we asked a lot of students. I asked in my class, most students come to school with some access to a computer. It could be most of them laptop. In the surveys that we saw a lot of laptops. We had 99%. So whoever that 1% who did not report having access to a good computer, it could be that they have a computer, but it's not good. You know what I mean? It may not be. So with that, the trend that we're considering is how do we support student ownership by having a license? Is there anything moving there? Oh, I guess.
I think your wife messaged you.
Was it embarrassing?
No, I can't see that far, so somebody might have better eyesight than I do.
It was an emergency, was it? Anyway, if you see something from my wife that is not embarrassing, let me see here. I'm just gonna.
That's the flaw with Apple products.
Yeah. Well, no. There is a. If I can find the mouse, there is an actual do not disturb that will reduce distraction.
We're just.
Yeah, I see that all the time when in my class when I see. Yeah, I forgot do not disturb. Here's do not disturb. But anyway, and I have the thing I'm waiting until the end is related to exactly that, the distraction. Bring your own device, student ownership. It's gonna change higher ed. It is already changing. We need to have licenses for every student to have access to any software they need on their device. I mean, that's the way to go. The vendors should help in changing that, because that's how it's going to happen. Students are going to still bring their own devices. Who prefers to use their software in the lab more than on their desktop or laptop? Does any of you prefer to just not have it? Now, if you have enough power on your computer.
Like certain things, if it's like something I'm not going to use very much, or just for one class, then I'll be like, why should I install this on my machine, have it take up space and memory and all that? Then I would just use it in the lab. Or if we do all the classwork in the lab, even if I can run it on my machine.
That's actually a good point.
Or if we're using it in class, then then you need to use it, or it would be a lot more convenient to use it in the lab.
I'm not saying that I agree, but it's a good point. Because, look, the reason for that is, it's a good point because it's happening. People are hesitating installing an app on their phone that they don't need. Like MFA, and we talked about LinkedIn, you know what I mean? If you use it occasionally, why install it? So it's a good point. I don't agree with it for education, because if you're gonna use FTK, and we could get FTK for every student, it's probably something you want to have it on all the time. So I think there is a value in that. But yeah, so I think maybe there, having a virtual app would be a possibility, where instead of having a full virtual machine, it's an app, you click on it and it will stream it. Just like some of the game streaming and some of there are apps streaming out there, but I don't know if you've
Yeah, I
experienced
think
them.
they're called instant apps on the Google Play Store. And when you open it up, like you can open an app to link to weather.com, and if you have the weather.com app, it'll open the weather.com app. If you don't have it, it'll install a very tiny lightweight version of the app on your device, and then open it on the tiny lightweight version. Once you exit, it uninstalls. So it's a pretty big thing.
I've seen networks where they replace VPN by using thin clients. So you have a thin client, whatever platform it runs on, then the university only has to worry about licensing whatever application it is for that virtualized machine. And then students and faculty could just log into that directly. Is that something that could work here?
Well, some of the vendors, not all of them, some of the vendors have already figured it out, and they require in their license to not allow shared machine, whether virtual or physical, or remote desktop to someone else's machine. So like we have MU Remote, which is terminal services. You can remote to it if you're stuck out of no computer, or you don't have a license for something and you just want to get to use Word. Your Word is not working here, you remote desktop to MU Remote and you can launch Word. Well, some licenses now exclude that. They say you cannot allow someone to remote to another machine and use that. Now, but I think the move there to change, and we have started, we have seen a change in that direction, is FTE-based licensing or headcount licensing. So instead of having, we had a concurrent use license, which we prefer. So we licensed the higher mark of how many people use the software. So you use the software once a week, you still have it, you have access to it. You just don't take any of our licenses until that one day that you launch it. You use it every single day, you have a license every single day. They removed that, and now they're saying, nope, it's per head. Every username will have a license. Now, if we move to that model, then we can put it anywhere, on your computer. Or if you don't want it, or you don't have a good computer, we put it on a virtual machine, and you launch it, or stream it.
I know one thing that like NVIDIA and Google and IBM for like, or for like gaming right now was like cloud-based, where you connect through, because they have the powerful machines that you can use, and you just pay like a subscription fee. So for like applications that are power and your computer can't handle it, it's not like you don't get a virtual desktop, but you have access to just like the application. You use their application to connect to their service, and you have like cloud-based computing so you can have like, so mostly for gaming right now, so because like PC gaming can be very intensive, so you use their hardware and stuff, and you pay a subscription fee as long as you own the game to use those, to play those games at better specs and stuff if your computer can't handle it.
That's a great way of taking that model. That model is a great model for fixing the issue of student computers being not enough for Unreal or Unity or for a big SPSS or MATLAB work that you need power. And a few years ago, they talked about game streaming and app streaming in a way of screen streaming, like this. The way today, like what Google had launched a few weeks ago, and it is a screen streaming. They're only showing you what you are controlling on the other side. Everything is running on that side. The app streaming that was introduced a few years ago, it didn't do it that way. It actually streamed the session in your memory. So it was running there, but you're doing the work in the memory. So it required a little more, it needed a plug-in and needed some work that you need to do, similar to the Android or the, if you don't have the app, it will give you enough to just start working with it. But I think by having complete screen streaming way, then everything is running over there. So that might be another option. And it will support both the BYOD, the bring your own device, and it will still maybe support the licensing model of, you have a license, it doesn't matter where you run it. You can run it on the server, you can run it on the desktop. But we certainly, the higher ed technology licensing should move to give every student, you're in college, you have access to those licenses that you need for the entire time that you need them, per person, for every individual. Here's what you get, and you have access to all of these throughout your, instead of trying to nickel and dime and who can have access to, you want to use Photoshop, you want it or not. Now, who knows what they're going to change in the future, but everything's going to become subscription, you pay per month. So if you're having access needs for 3 months, 4 months, you just pay for those 4 or 5 months, not you. University will pay on your behalf, part of your fees.
You mentioned thin client, and I think that we're going into cyclic patterns, because the person slightly older like me in this room will remember when I started university, in our lab, we had Ampex A10 machines that were just thin clients, 2 colors, orange over black, green over black. That was the only choice that you had, and all the computational power was somewhere else.
Right.
That was circa 99, remember I was in Italy and we arrived much later than everyone else, and it was circa 1996. That was the situation at university in Italy, 1996. And so the fact that now we are talking about going back to that model, it makes me wonder if it will succeed, because the problems that were there at that time are still here now, like input lag. You can't really solve that, because you can bring all the computational power that you want somewhere, but if the link is slow, the link is slow. So how can you overcome from that? That's the same for gaming. Now, the platform that you mentioned, Google Stadia or GeForce Now, I'm a beta tester for GeForce Now since 2016, and I use that, and I use Project Stream. I was a beta tester for Project Stream. They work very, very well for limited scenarios. Like Project Stream, you had 1 game and probably 2,000 users across the entire United States. So the amount of computational power was small compared to, I don't know, a platform like GeForce Now that has, I think, a catalog of roughly 200 something titles, and it's open in 5 continents. It's everywhere. It's in Europe, it's in Oceania, it's unbelievable, it's in Asia, it's everywhere. So the number of servers that are dedicated to that particular platform is huge. At the school level, how much can we, let's say, consider about moving all this computational power from, suppose that we have at the moment, I don't remember how many, like 3,000 desktop computers here at Marshall, including offices, labs, etc. And what if we use the equivalent of the cost of these 3,000 desktop to build an infrastructure like the one that you were mentioning? Can we get to that point, or is it still not enough now? Because suppose that it's $1,000 per computer, just to make things simple. We have 3,000, that's the amount of money that we can supposedly invest in that architecture. Will it work the same? That's a very good question. I don't have the answer.
For some applications, it would.
Yeah, for some application, of course.
And that's kind of the balance. We certainly are going to see, exactly to your point, we're going to see less labs, computers, at least purchased. If you have something already purchased 3 years ago, it will stay. But we're now double checking, spending more time on checking really the need for the computers to be replaced, and do we really need that same number? We're tracking utilization to see if students are still using all of those computers. We're trying to find the computers that are least used to try to not renew them, not replace them. Some services are going to still need more power locally until the technology of streaming gets better. But what we have today is access to the cloud. And one of the sessions, MUIT CIO sessions, was fully about the cloud and how Azure and AWS, Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, and Google Cloud, and even IBM, Bluemix, all of these services offer anything that you want to do really to do it in the cloud. And we started looking at it a while back. When is it going to be feasible on this side and the other side? Now the problem, you have a server that's 5 years old. And I'm not sure if any of you used your CCDC cluster that was just built recently. I know Gage did. I don't know if any of the other digital forensics that Griffin and Jacob and others. But anyway, those servers, if you think of the cost of those servers to purchase them, because they were old, it was nothing almost. We had a couple, 3 servers that we provided because they were deemed non-enterprise class because of 7 years age. They're still good for running VMs that digital forensics can test or work with, but for training, cyber range, but they're not good for running registration. So the cost for those was much less than going to the cloud. If you go to the cloud, you're going to pay, even if you go with the lowest configuration, you're still going to pay monthly, whether you use it or not, whether it's adequate or even not adequate, you're still going to pay monthly. So we're still going to have a case for that. I was hoping that this would not be, but I think we're always going to be this physical hardware that's sitting out there you could use. But when we buy new labs, and Brian might know a little more about the needs for a lot of colleges asking now for more labs. Some of them. What is it? One of them is actually you one, right?
Yeah.
But there are others in your college that are needed to be replaced. There are hundreds of them.
I don't think you'll ever be able to do digital forensics in the cloud. I think it will always be a local process using computing power that's local with a physical machine, because that's the way it's done. You know, if you go out and work for the police department, that's the way that they do it, et cetera. So I don't know if we'll be able to ever move that completely to the cloud on the digital forensics side. My side is totally different. You know, on the IA side, we can use a lot of open source things and build out things like cyber ranges.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are attempts, we will learn from them by other universities. So Michigan did all on-premise cyber range, $600,000 a pod, multiple pods, millions of dollars. Virginia Tech, $40 million of cloud-only investment. I'm watching both. I spoke to them when they first started. I continue to talk to them every year to see which one's going to work. Of course, we don't have the 40 million here. We don't have the 4 or 5 million they put. So we do not have that, but at least their experience. My thought on using cloud is use other people equipment. Like if one of their pods in Michigan is not used and they will offer it to our students, faculty, then it would be almost remote connection.
That's what we're doing in the case of the labs that we're offering, the Mid-Atlantic CyberWatch labs are actually hosted out of Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, yeah. So that's the same model. Difference is we're using their unused equipment, and we build our own instead of using their. Now, Virginia Tech, after the first year, there was a restriction because it was only Virginia only funding. It was governor's money, so they did not want to expand it. But that after a year, when I spoke to them, they were a little more open to kind of talk about ways that we could collaborate. So there are different models, but we don't know. I think what's working for us in our size is having access physically to what you need to do here and use the cloud when it's needed. So instead of saying all in, we're going to put all the money in the cloud, or all in, we're just going to keep buying servers, we're just trying to be a little smarter. Anytime you have less money, you think smarter about the action. So we're trying to be there. In relation to the future of education, and I haven't heard from everybody, if anybody has any thoughts, technology-wise. I was asked that same question this morning in a report. So I drafted a couple things, and I thought this would, that we mentioned distraction and the text that you saw, or the updates. You guys have used social media for a certain period of time, but it's certainly not from when you were a year and a half old or 2 years old. But we're going to have students who used mobile devices all their life, from 2 years old, who use pictures and Snapchats or whatever since they were 3 or 4, even if it's not officially allowed. And those students are going to be a little different than you guys, certainly a lot of difference than how my generation was. And we need to be prepared. It's not good or bad, it's just they're gonna be different. There are always difference between generations. So I was trying to reflect on that. I'm observing my kids. My daughter's close to college, my son is less. But they have different skills, but they also have different challenges. I experienced myself some of that challenge. Being a technologist, you deal with the same technology that even younger generation use. But, so I drafted some things for that report that I'm working on, and I felt, well, this can be expanded, which is changing the way delivering lectures. Who likes 2 hours lectures? Attend them or give them. I didn't ask because the faculty raised their hands. Notice the second generation didn't raise.
My two students looked at me like,
what is he talking about? Well, if you go back, so if we think about it, our generation might be okay with it, even though I think I'm losing attention span. I do not have attention span for more than 40 minutes. Even 40 minutes is huge attention span compared to the younger generation. But you go back, to go to younger ages, they do not have 15 minutes attention span. There are studies, I end up reading a lot of articles about that topic. So there's 8 minutes average of attention span, which is not bad, I mean it's bad, but it's not, it's not as worse as, what I thought, we're gonna have 2 minutes. Because how much do you spend on Instagram, Snapchat, or Facebook post? Does anybody spend 8 minutes on single picture?
5 seconds.
Seconds.
Usually.
So I started drafting my observation of all of us, I'm included, how we want things quick. We're gonna do as many as possible. We still get attention. We give attention, strong attention. If you see a picture, you're gonna know anybody who's in that picture. You're gonna identify them, and you might comment, you might reply. So there's more interaction. There's more social engagement that you see online, that even in the classroom. The classroom, you have few people going in and out on conversations. But if you look at a post, we were on vacation last week. My daughter posted something. 15 minutes later, I noticed notification. I go in there and I saw a lot of interactions. Now, most of them are not meaningful or not because it's a picture. But what I immediately thought about, well, everybody was ready. They got notifications and it got their attention, even for a few seconds. But they got the attention. So I started thinking and started drafting, and maybe that's one way of delivering content. If you think of the material that you put, and faculty may not like that idea much because it's kind of, but that could happen in 10 years. In 10 years, we might have a burst of small, short, full attention for a short period of time, higher engagement throughout the entire week instead of specific sessions. But each account, if you will post specific topic. So over that week, you might receive the same amount of information in that 2 hour or 45 minutes or an hour lecture, that it's coming in bursts. It's giving you enough time to reflect on the topic and make comments or ask questions. I don't know. I mean, I just thought about it this morning, and I didn't plan to share it with you, but since we're talking about the future of education, I thought it was a good coincidence that I just thought of. What do you think about that? Is it too crazy?
So, one of Apple's latest updates, they had like screen time, so you can see how much you spend on apps and stuff. And I checked, and I spend like 15 hours a week on average on social media alone. And like, I can't imagine just staying focused for 15 hours straight a week in like a classroom. Like, because social media is like all these different topics like instantly, but then when you're in a classroom, it's mostly like one focused thing. So like, I mean, like, there's a difference there of like 15 hours a week on social media because it's like so much different things, and then like a classroom.
I think your brain gets trained to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in college, we didn't have social media, dating myself, but, lecture was lecture. You just went, you paid attention. There weren't class activities very often. They hadn't flipped the classroom or anything like that. So, but as our brains change and develop, your professors have to start figuring out different ways to keep your attention because of social media.
But it's more challenging in a traditional hour-and-a-half lecture to try to do it in PowerPoints or in style of teaching to keep every 2 seconds to have something new. Because
Yeah.
those 15 hours, if you break them into the smallest piece, how many seconds a piece? It's probably a few seconds. You said a couple seconds, maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute. But imagine how many things, how many components of those 15 hours you have. Because if you break it by, it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff that we've seen in a week or we interact with.
No, one thing I noticed, like in classrooms is like with the FIA we have the virtual labs, and then in the CIT you have the Zybooks and stuff where you have like all the interactive stuff, and like you don't have to go at like the classes pace, you can go at like your own pace. So like I've realized like I've stayed more focused on what I'm doing and like more and extremely interactive stuff than like when I'm getting lectured at, and then they tell you to do it on your own.
Right.
So like the interactive stuff is like where I stay more like focused into it. Like I even like sometimes when I'm doing a lab, I won't check my phone for 40 minutes. But if I'm a lecturer, I'll check my phone like 2 minutes into it.
Mhm.
So like.
Say that again.
Well, and they say to try, as you teach now, 20 minutes tops before you either have some kind of diversion to catch their attention back, because, I mean, literally, like you said, 2 minutes. Yeah.
Well, that's with current student. Future students, 20 minutes is too much. I think it's too much. I don't know. They may prove me wrong, but I think the trend is going, all of us,
Right.
we are now work in bursts. I mean, you work in a little bit. I mean, it's not for us. We can still probably focus, but I cannot sit an hour reading a 60-page report. If I want to focus, I can skim through it. I might end up spending an hour reading materials, but it would not be focus. It would be skimming.
I think social media is going to come out of it eventually, though. I think there's going to be a breaking point where people have done so much social media and people's parents have done social media that it's going to become like the old trend. Like as much as wearing like a windbreaker suit, you know? That's just how I see
Members
it.
only jackets, Bill.
Well, it's certainly going to transform.
I think there will be a niche for it, but I don't think those people will necessarily be in academia. I think those people do really well in like private sector, business positions. And another thing that's happening with the College of Business right now is they're going through the process of completely changing the curriculum from big, long 2-hour sections to shorter. You have, instead of having 4 classes a semester, 5 classes a semester, you're going to have like 8 classes a semester, and they're going to be shortened down to an hour long each. So the College of Business is already adjusting for that. I don't see, I know social media is like going to affect how some people think, especially like with IT, but I think people who are like learning IT are going to probably diverge more into like the technical, like registrations, licensings, codings, things like that before, and they're going to have the guidance from parents or academia who would tell them, you know, social media is not going to teach you about IT as much.
No, yeah, you're right. It's if there are attempts, then they're not going to last. They're not going to be succeeding.
Well,
But the
I
style
believe that social media has a place to play in the classroom. In fact, I use Snapchat, Instagram, memes, YouTube a lot in my classes because I know it will hold their attention.
Right. Well, there are
So,
two
this is-
concepts. There's the use of social media that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, so you're sort of blending it in, so it's something that students already know, so you use that platform. You know, I know for a fact that I can text Gage all day long, and if I hit him up on Snapchat, he hits me back. I mean, it's just usually just a conversation, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? But everyone communicates in a different way, and if we don't evolve, we're not engaging our students.
Well, that's a use of social media that you may replace next year with whatever is going to be the best communication tool, and you might replace the 10 next decade. So that's to your point, that social media as we know it today might change because, well, it may or may not, but it's certainly going to continue to transform. It's not going to be the same thing. It's going to be a trend. It's going to be multiple changes. But the mindset, I don't think I used the term social media for teaching, What I meant is the social, which is probably valid for this phase, maybe, using it for communication. What I meant is social media is changing the incoming students' style of cognitive learning to require bursts of shorter amount of information with shorter period of time, asking for feedback. Not necessarily social media. It could be continue to be online learning through Blackboard or something similar, but it's going to include ways of interactions by you receiving notification about a new post. Maybe it's a slide at a time. Imagine a PowerPoint slide show of a 45, 50 slides that is posted in your Blackboard with a notification of on your mobile phone throughout a whole week, instead of sitting an hour watching the presentation. That's kind of what I meant. I didn't mean necessarily using social media as the platform to deliver.
Although there are people who do that.
Yeah, and it may be not a bad idea to have a study.
Because you know that they'll engage.
Right.
While they're engaging in other activities on that social media platform. If you also hit them up with something they need to know for class, it's sort of like social engineering learning. Tricking people into learning.
Right.
It's so hard to do for me personally though, because I have one account that I think relates to this pretty well, and it's that I follow on Instagram. It's a physics account. It's like physics for fun, and they make toys you can purchase from a website that's linked in their bio, and each post is the toy, and it's usually like a top or some kind of color changing pattern thing, and it always has a description right below it that's going to tell me everything I would need to know to tell you exactly about this physics method. But I'm not a physics person, so I'm not stopping to read it. Whether they do or not is something I don't know. That could be a really effective strategy of learning for some people. It is out there.
Well, yeah, so that same, even though they're using social media, I didn't mean necessarily to use social media, but that could be way. But if the same model is put in your area of study with your peer classmates involved together in a platform that you're familiar with, Blackboard or something similar, you may find more engagement because it will be your own topic.
Yeah.
And it will be the comments and the questions. I mean, I'm learning, and I appreciate both the CCDC and the Game Design Guild and Geeks and Gadgets just from listening to students' interaction. Because I end up going and searching myself because I get challenged by that topic that they were discussing, or when I hear people talking about something. I may not know people at all, but I know that their interest is so-and-so. And when they ask each other a question about some certain topics, it creates in me a curiosity to go and learn about it. So if I'm assuming if that same thing is happening, already happening between the students, then it's certainly gonna increase their engagement. And I see more engagement between students than how much they might engage in a class on average. Some students are very engaged in certain classes. And then of course there's the whole social, face-to-face versus online, where people might be more willing to share things online than to speak up in an environment. So that was one thing I just thought about, and I wasn't wondering. There is the aspect of security and privacy that was brought up by all higher education technology companies around the entire country over the past year, related to social media and Facebook issues, related to some of the rules. And so how much do you thought, students, and I don't know if you can represent all of your areas, you're all technical, so you know how to protect yourselves, but how much do you hear about students' concerns, not necessarily in social media? I don't want to talk about Facebook breaches. I want to talk about the data that students have in the hands of university technology, not necessarily IT, but is that something that you hear of a concern, or in the word of people putting everything on social media, it's you don't have much that is private? I mean, how do you feel about privacy?
Oh no, I was thinking of something else. But
The way I feel is like nowadays is like, cause I feel like privacy is more of a concern for like older generations and like certain people. Like the way I look at it is if someone wants to get find your information, they're gonna find it nowadays anyways. Like you can't hide anything anymore anyways, unless you completely stay off social media and like keep your life very private and very quiet. Like nowadays, if someone wants your social security number, your address, they can just go online and find it. Like, stuff like that is not hidden anymore. So when it comes to private, because there's also privacy concerns, like, people, like, when the government wants, like in China, how they have cameras everywhere. And, I recently heard that China can find, any citizen within any person that comes to the country within 7 minutes. Because when you go into China, they do a face scan and a palm scan when you go into the country. So they can find anyone in their country within 7 minutes. And that's like a privacy concern for like people that travel there. But like, if someone wants to find you, someone can find you. Like, personally, I don't really care about my privacy. Like, if someone wants to, like, when people cover up their laptop cameras, like, I don't care. If someone wants to watch me, they can watch me sit there and watch a Netflix video. I don't care. They can watch me be lazy on my couch. Like, it doesn't bother me. But like, I know older people, like, because technology is newer to them, the privacy is a more concern to them. But like, privacy issues, I feel like in my generation isn't as big of an issue as with older generations.
Can you define older, please?
I think you.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Brian, that also means me, so.
Well, it's also mindset. I mean, most people, even if they're older generation in your definition, is probably folks that are not technically inclined. So if people,
Even
Certainly a lot of people are very
architects
would disagree.
who are older, I think, are way more privacy concerned than this generation. This generation considers its information already to be breached.
Yeah.
And there's so many breaches, each breach is bigger. I think this generation realizes that nothing is secret and you really don't have a sense of privacy.
Well, it's just like the younger generation. I have a 17-year-old, 21-year-old, 13, so all their friends, always. What's the first thing they do when they get their driver's license? They're all showing a picture of the driver's license on social media. Okay, you got your driver's license number and everything else. Right off the bat.
A couple of Twitter accounts. One's called Need a Credit Card Number.
Yeah,
People
I mean,
take pictures of their credit cards. And
Yeah, people don't think. So part of it is education. I mean, you may not be concerned, I'm concerned, but like me, because, my kids have ties to me, I'm responsible for them. If they get messed over and their credit card gets stolen, who's ultimately responsible because they're underage and everything else? But as an older person, you just gotta think about what you post. My wife hates social media. She won't put anything on social media. She does every once in a while, but she hates it. And stuff I'll put out there, why'd you share that? Why'd you share that? Well, no big deal. It's pictures or thought of the day or whatever. But people do cross the line. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people put out there that's gonna cost them a future job, that's gonna cost them this and that, and so.
well, I mean, and you kind of, you proved the point about the difference in generation, different ways of looking at it, because you're saying what your kids are finding less problematic, you're finding problematic.
Yeah.
I think that one of the points that was mentioned is that there's so much out there already that just me doing one extra piece of protection, like I'm not going to be protected 100% if I cover one hole here and there are so many pieces of information about me somewhere else. But I think one of the trends that should happen, and we're going on tangent in specific security if I go too much in depth, but we need to change how much the picture of a driver's license or a social security number could cause the damage. Because if that changed, then if somebody by mistake or meant to share it, because they're not thinking, I mean, I didn't think that it should be that problematic that I know about all the issues. Do you have a follow?
One thing, like when they mentioned credit cards and stuff, like Apple just announced their card, and like on the physical card, there's not even a number on it. There's no credit card number on the physical card. Everything's stored on on each individual's phone, and it's not even stored in Apple's servers. So I think that's one way of because I'm sure once those things are released, people are going to post pictures everywhere of those things, but no one's ever going to know any of the information of the card. So I mean, I feel like companies are working more to keep people more private because they're being more careless.
Right.
It does that kind of something when they screw up.
Not to be.
Well, I mean, if you go out on the dark web or the light web, whatever you call it, looking for credit card numbers, it's a wash to credit card numbers. It's worth nothing, like pennies on a dollar to buy a credit card. So, that's one way of looking at it, is your information really isn't worth very much because it's been so breached. But on the flip side, going back to this idea of social media, I use it in FYS. And I've actually got students who have no social media presence at all, which blows my mind. So is there a backlash at this point?
Well, the social media.
That's the next generation coming up?
Well, depending on what you mean by social media. If you ask them Facebook, they're gonna say no.
None at all. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, nothing.
I hate Facebook.
Yeah, nobody uses, the new generation certainly, and my daughter told me one time, she's like, Facebook for old people, when she was younger. And
When my mom was on Facebook, I knew it was a.
Same.
I had to go
But-
on.
But, I mean, there was a tool that I just heard about last night, that has, I forgot, house party or something like that, is anybody?
Oh, house party.
House party.
Yeah, I never heard of it until my kids started using it, and I felt like, of all the other tools, you picked this one? Of course, I downloaded it, used it a little bit. It's certainly different than others, and the multi-people, all the sharing of activities is different. So the social media is gonna continue to change and evolve, and the thing that I wanna guide the conversation to go to the next, related to privacy, because that's where I felt privacy in higher ed is a little different than privacy in social media, where you take a picture. So has any of you traveled back into the country? I'm sure you are in the country, out and in recently. How, did you show your passport?
Of course.
I did not show my passport.
I'm not a
It's not even a
citizen.
citizen.
Oh, picture was enough. Did anybody experience the facial
Yeah,
recognition?
it's just facial recognition.
So first,
Fingers, 10 fingers, face.
oh, you have to whole body
full,
scan.
completely.
Well, I heard about the facial recognition, but when we entered, it was me, my daughter, and my son in the row. They scanned him. His passport was still in my pocket. He went into the country without even showing a passport. I go in, scan me, let me in. My daughter, who grew significantly in the past couple of years, it got red. So I thought this is gonna be a problem. They said, no, just show your passport. So basically, all they needed is either the facial recognition was enough of the proof of identity, stronger than their passport, obviously, because they did not ask any, hundreds of people went. We were 6,000 people going through that port. And she's one of those who had to show her passport. So what I mean is, a picture of a passport posted online today, her passport, if she posted that, it wouldn't have done anything. Because at the end of the day, they used facial recognition. They trusted it more than the passport for a lot of these people. You have a thought?
I know at LAX and I think it's JFK, they have express lanes where you can go through when you come back in through customs, where you don't even talk to a customs agent if you have nothing to declare or anything.
It's a pre-check.
Yeah, and you just scan your passport and then they just scan your face and you just walk right through and you don't talk to anyone, it's just real quick. But then they also have like the global entry program, where you go through customs and at Dubai airport, you go through US customs. So when you get here, it's quick, you don't have to do anything.
Well, in my case, there's no human interaction until a deep threat.
Yeah.
Like we came, walked through this, looked at the face, let us in, except when it went red, somebody came and asked her to go and show her passport to another person. But everything was completely automated. We just walked through. But my follow-up question to that is, how do you feel? Because when we talked about attendance, do you have a thought?
Yeah,
Yes.
go
ahead, sorry.
Okay. What's the chances of us getting something like that on our pre-existing camera system to track people that aren't supposed to be here or?
We are a public campus, and unfortunately.
Yeah, but that was my follow-up question.
You mean like the preacher guy?
Well, my question was
preacher guy especially.
Yeah, well, for that, it's a different,
Right,
it's
but
more of a policy, but that was exactly my.
Convicted felons or people that shouldn't be in public places.
Yeah, that would be public safety and police mostly. So they could do that, if somebody's wanted, they could use other services. But the question to you guys, related to that, exactly what you're saying, but not necessarily for finding people who shouldn't be there, it's mostly, how do you feel about, how all of you feel about a facial recognition or a profile, about biometric profile, for you to be put somewhere that's used for any of the services, maybe attendance tracking, right? Some of my students,
So I can change my fingerprints.
Right.
That's the.
well, some of the students in my class, almost every class or every other class, a group asked about that project to be. We did multiple projects for doing facial recognition for attendance tracking. It was individuals, and now we're looking at one picture all, show the list of all people who were in the room. But how do you feel, they did it voluntarily for the class, but how do you feel if something like this is implemented? How do you feel if, or how do you think other students also feel if something like this is implemented?
I know one thing, Professor Morgan called me out one time when I have in class, is I took off my picture off of like professors' attendance list, so they can't see what I look like.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing about that right there, okay, is they encourage professors to look at class lists and make sure it's really you taking your test. But the students have the option to take their pictures off, which makes no sense whatsoever.
I don't think there is a rule. Now, it could be-
Oh, I had to, Mike, I told you, that if they have checked confidentiality, no picture shown, get them off the class list.
Well, I will need to revise that or
Good.
review that, because
Good.
first, the confidentiality
I
flag,
agree.
supposed to be, the rule for confidentiality flag is removal from public directories.
Yes, I agree with you totally.
That's
I
what
mean,
it is.
We should be able to see who's supposed to be sitting.
Well, no, there is, I remember. Pictures.
Now-
That was a really bad picture, so.
Right, so what would help with that, is Bob is not here, but our director of ID office is, we have difference in thoughts, and so we're looking at, we want to allow students to replace their pictures with their preference.
I think it's $20.
No?
No,
You want to reprint the card.
Just your picture.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to picture on file to be your own, actually, imagine this, I'm not promising it because I want it done, but when I go and ask for something, they come back with 4 different technical reasons that cannot happen. But what we're thinking about is, for a student, a freshman coming to campus, while they're at home, on their mobile phone, they get a link or an app, or they know about a way to go Marshall.edu/set up my ID, and it will let you set up your entire ID on the phone. You take the picture if you want to, or you upload the
Gorilla mask.
I was gonna say.
What if I take a picture of someone else?
Right, so,
Yeah.
so the concern for that is it would not be verified and printed on the card until you come to campus. But instead of coming to campus and waiting in line to sit in front of that blue screen, and you're already stressed and you cannot even smile, freshmen coming on their orientation are not the best relaxed. They may have a better, but if they go to the ID office and all they need to do is just show their picture and themselves, and the ID person, the employee, will verify it on their
Well,
computer.
even a more alternative option to that would be giving them an option to upload a picture form of identification, like their
Or
driver's
that.
license
Right.
from home.
Oh, from home, right. And I think that was mentioned, somebody mentioned that.
Because I think distant students should be able to have some sort of picture in the system, and often they
Right.
do not.
So when we talked about that, the concern was privacy, about taking their picture of their driver's license. But if that system is, well, you haven't answered me. Who would be against, who would be against having a facial recognition profile in the system
For,
that would
like-
help you to do your own work?
Campus-wide and stuff?
Yeah, like when you set up,
I don't know,
What if there's a
I would be
breach?
against that. That's one of the main concerns, because while,
Assume it is. Like,
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
said, assume it is breached, like,
My
you treat
credit,
out the data.
My face is already out there, so I don't really care.
I mean,
Facebook-
while a lot of our data is
It's on
out there,
Instagram.
not all of it is out there. You can't find a lot of individual, like very specific individual information out there. You can find very general things about some things. As Bill said, some students have nothing online. You can't find really anything about them.
do you have Facebook, Twitter?
Yeah, I have different social medias. One thing that was very interesting as I grew up, as a kid I didn't have any social medias. So my online presence was pretty much anonymous. And then as I grew up, eventually I got more social media, which is not so anonymous. And there was a point where I was like kind of cringing, but I linked that to essentially my previous online presence. So now you see my username that's linked to me as a citizen, as a person. But like 10 years ago, that was not the case. There's no, I mean, unless you really got deep and did IP scans or something to find out who, which you need to get into someone's server, and that takes a lot more effort than what just a common person sits down at a computer and searches can do, then you could never find out who I was.
Now, some of those
So,
folks
not saying it's
that would like to,
impossible, but a common person would not be able to do it,
Well,
period.
my whole objection to facial identification is not what you're gonna do with it, but what if it gets breached?
Yeah.
What if DHS or someone else decides to use that same information?
Right.
You know, that's.
But what is-
Once it's breached,
What is it?
so let's say 10 years down the road, somebody, I don't know, silly example, someone becomes a secret agent, goes into another country. Suddenly, this other country like has that data, and they can track that U.S. agent.
Yeah.
Hell, they went to this university
Well, what is
all
that
over the
data?
country.
What is that data? What is that data that can be breached?
The facial recognition.
It's a picture.
Algorithm.
It's all they need is a picture.
Well, a picture is a two-dimensional,
fingerprint.
facial recognition is a three-dimensional.
The
That's
cameras,
an interesting question.
well, today's Facebook facial recognition is based on features and learning.
Well,
It's
yeah,
not
like-
it's a picture.
But
Apple's
it's
Face
not
ID.
completely accurate.
Apple's Face ID, yeah, there's here and there, someone can use a picture, but majority of the time, a picture doesn't work when it unlocks someone's phone. Because it uses three-dimensional, I can't remember all the technology that Apple uses in it.
It uses like an IR scan.
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of little beams that,
Right.
so it actually detects depth of
Well,
your face.
they're doing more with it than just what I
So-
meant. Here's an example from last week. My kids and I were on a trip, and the photographer showed, you know, when you're on any place where they want you to pay for your picture, they go and they start taking a picture of you, and then they give you a card, right? Where you go in that online, you put the card in. So the first time somebody showed up with the camera, and I said, no, we're fine. She went, and she didn't ask who we are. She didn't give us a card.
Oh, that's bizarre.
And then another person at a different location
Or they
did the
usually
same thing.
scan your ship card, don't they?
They're doing facial recognition. And I looked, and the
As you
app
come in.
required me, asked me when I when I approved signing up for the account, they're agreeing to allow us to do facial recognition.
Oh my gosh.
So
That's
after a
interesting.
few times doing it, I asked, what's going on? They said, well, we know who you are. How do you know? We just took a picture of us. So what they did, they took a picture. Now
Oh, okay.
they took pictures
So they're
of us.
checking you against the directory every time they take your picture?
They took a picture of us when we went into the place.
Mm-hmm.
They set for identification, and they looked at the picture and the ID. Once we got in there, nobody ever asked us for the scan, but when they take a picture of us as a group, they said, later we'll know who you are from facial recognition and send us the pictures to pay for. So they're doing it already without doing I did not train the system on my face like we do with Face ID. It just did it through the simpler, or maybe more complex, algorithm that depended completely on the visual. Now, the reason for
I'm
that,
believing that's more accurate than Face ID, which is like,
I'll tell
as
you
we
why
know,
it's
flawed.
accurate.
And then Facebook's like face recognition, that's a whole other realm.
Well, Face ID usually goes through a percentage threshold, and if it matches close enough, it's like, yeah, it's him, or no, it's not.
Did you
Well,
look at
I'll-
your
I'll-
pictures? Were there people that didn't belong in your set of
No.
pictures?
no, I'm not, and I'm not gonna get you, I'm not gonna pay $20 a picture. But here's why it's different. Facial recognition with Face ID. Do you remember the rate of failure? 50,000, 1 to 50,000. Every 50,000 people, there is one person who could log into the same phone with a different face. But how many people are in the classroom?
Not nearly 50,000.
So the system and some of my students who did the attempts led to the same point. You're only comparing with the 50, 60, 100, 500, or the entire 14,000 students. So your comparison to identify who that person is, you're looking in a profile. The machine learning algorithm is looking at the input of only active students in that program to find which student is that person. So it's much easier with less what do you call it, artifact to know who the person is, because you're only comparing it with 14,000 or with 10,000 or 200 people instead of 50,000.
So my other concern with it is, why is all that necessary? Is attendance really that big of an issue that we need to automate it? Like, especially at a school like this, we usually have no more than 20 people per class. There's exceptions, there's a lot of exceptions, but
But it's for you to not pay for top hat.
I mean, you don't have to pay for Top
Honestly.
Hat if the teacher takes attendance.
Believe me, attendance is an issue in the school.
Are you,
My question is, why
do
is
you use
attendance-
it for polling or anything
Or
like
if the
that in your
students
class?
log in.
Why is attendance required?
In classes that I have had it, it's not, it's just pure attendance, and that's it. But
Where's my class?
if we just had a thing on Blackboard, you go in, teacher says, hey, here's the password, just like Top Hat, and you type that in, it's the same effect, you just don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, of course.
But with all the cameras and everything, that's a lot of money to install, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of software.
Cameras are already in everything.
I just don't know why the investment.
How many
Why?
here doesn't have a camera with them right here? Everybody has a camera, so the cost of camera, I'm not suggesting we're doing a debate.
Okay.
I'm not in favor or against. I'm asking to learn more about people's thoughts. I'm not proposing it. Today what we're doing is the ID card, which in fact, it reveals a lot about you because it knows where your location is, the time, and there's so much that you're already sharing. But I was just asking because of the topic of in China that all those cameras know who the person is, and for security purposes, that there might be ways that you can identify and maybe record. And they're already happening. They're already happening everywhere. In China, the number is higher, but London had it for years. And every single point, in every place, you have 14 cameras taking pictures of you at the same time. So.
And DHS has rolled out facial recognition software in specific cities. But all that is a very hush-hush program, and God knows what they're using it for.
Well, it's happening everywhere. I mean, anywhere you go, like I said, vacations now are using that. When you go on vacation, people knew who you are, where you are, just by taking a picture of you. Of course, the social media is changing it. But yeah, but there are two questions there. Why do we need it? And then the other question, why do we need, did you say why do you need attendance first place?
Yeah.
No, you have an answer from there, the other side of the, but in general, it's to the professor to decide on the success factor for it. So if a freshman FYS student missed a class multiple times, it could be something that they need help with. So it's not necessarily a requirement that you get a grade for. It's up to the professor to decide how they do it in class, but in general, holistically, the entire college experience is very impacted by the first few months of people coming to campus. So if you confirm that somebody at least is there and they're staying the whole time, there's less likelihood for them to drop out of that class because they're there, they're coming, they're engaging, they're talking. And then you can look at other factors. But if somebody is not in class for 3 sessions, the first few weeks of the class, what is the chance for them to continue that class? And the studies are showing that what is the chance for them to even graduate from the entire program? So they
Sometimes you identify issues they have,
Right.
such as they're taking care of an older parent at home, they're their own caretaker.
Right.
So the question becomes, how do you accommodate them? How do we make college more accommodating to them for their personal needs?
How many students here are freshmen, or have you, well, anybody is freshman or sophomore, because the program started last year? So last year and this year, there's a,
Don't they just swipe their users or something?
right, but the goal of it is for a student advisor to reach out to you, the resident advisor, to reach out to the student who missed a couple classes and ask them, we care about you, is there anything going on? Do you need connection with someone? Is it financial problem? Is it, personal problem? Whatever is the reason that you're not going to class. Is it the class itself? Do you need to speak to the professor? So just by doing that, you can increase the engagement and the student retention and success because they will end up graduating.
I'm gonna answer his question. No. It's a case in point that happened to me this morning. Okay, freshman, sophomore classes, you can probably get away with it a lot of times, okay? When you get to your junior and senior classes and build upon those freshman, sophomore experiences and add a lot to it, I had a kid this morning email my dean and wants out of my class because they're gonna fail, because they have to graduate in May, but it's a class, it's a required class. This person is notorious for missing 75 to 80% of in-class sessions when there is no attendance requirement. They told my dean that they are self-admittedly inadequately, I can't say the word, they ain't prepared. They aren't ready for my class. What's their own fault?
Whose problem is that?
Huh?
It's their fault.
It's their fault, but they went out of the class because too many times I don't require attendance. Jim, it's up to you. Yeah, it's up to you if you come. But don't go begging me for help if you're not willing to show up, and surely don't go to the dean and say, I'm not ready for this class, waive it as a requirement.
But,
Oh,
Those,
you know,
well, no, you're just not gonna graduate.
well, that's what I said, but see, that's just it, if you require the attendance, you get people used to it, it's not gonna be an issue.
well, that's what I was gonna say when you said it's not your fault, it is our fault, because we didn't require attendance throughout, or we didn't track. So the question, the initiative for attendance tracking that's happening in first year freshmen is not saying required as much as it's saying tracked.
Right, and like Bill, accommodations, if somebody can't get to class because they work midnights to provide for somebody else, I'll make accommodations and I'll still help people. That's why because, you don't have to be there at 8 o'clock, but if it's your choice for not coming at 8 o'clock, that's something different.
How was the time?
You're done.
Okay. I noticed that it was 30:30 and I wasn't sure what's next after.
Just to play devil's advocate, to really put everybody on their head. So now you're tracking attendance and you have a system that has that, like you have systems that have grades. What if employers start asking for attendance records as well as academic performance?
It's fascinating.
It messed over a lot of people.
See, on my point, I would argue that is, for one thing, I mean, the main argument here is we're paying to go here, but like, at a workplace, you're getting paid to be there. We're not getting paid to be here. So,
Well, the thing is, this is a dress rehearsal.
like, I show up to work on time, I get paid to be there. I get paid to be there, but like, the class, like, sometimes if I just feel like going, I don't go, because I'm paying to be there. Like, I'm paying to go to it. But if I'm getting paid, I'll show up more. But I mean, we can't pay kids to go to college also, that wouldn't make sense. But,
That's already defined in Sweden and Denmark.
oh, yeah,
Okay. Take that argument just a little further. You're going to want to get professional certifications as your career grows. And now you're going to have to attend online sessions or things like that. You're not getting paid to do that. You're being asked to do that to increase your career.
yeah, but a lot of times, the companies will pay for you to catch it, so you're going for free, while you're still getting paid to work.
Well, of course, I think Mike is playing devil advocate, but at the end of the day, they probably prefer the other way. They prefer that somebody can do. I'm not speaking on your behalf. I'm speaking on the industry.
Yeah.
And it's a style of teaching. I cannot put my opinion in against or with, but I can say at least in my class and in my experience in hiring, outcome, what you could do and what you have done has the most impact. The problem, you cannot do better and yet you cannot do a lot if you don't attend. But I do not think, personally, I cannot speak to any other faculty but I think can you do the work? Have you done the work? It's probably the most important thing for someone who's looking, I mean, right? If somebody comes to you and says, I attended every single class, but I have no idea what cloud is. Because you mentioned cloud in your, and then you have someone else who said, I do not have a record of my attendance, but here's what I have deployed in the cloud while I was freshman and senior or in high school. You're probably gonna bet, if you're gonna bet, you're probably gonna bet on the one who proved that they have built something, or they brought a reference from a professor that these people are on time, but necessarily, it's not necessarily the actual record of attendance that's proving, it's the actual work, but
If you don't come to my class,
exactly.
I'm not gonna write you a
Right.
professional reference.
So the attendance is required for the outcome, but it's not like the attendance is what the employers are asking. They're asking for the outcome, but you cannot get to the outcome if you don't come to class.
Right.
So the requirement for attendance is justified by the value you're getting from the class.
That can be true, I mean, that's absolutely true, unless it's like, my students admittedly tell me, I teach an 8 o'clock class to seniors every single semester, getting ready for the future. They don't come because it's too early for them. And the pass rate of that class is horrible. I mean, it really is.
You know why I take attendance? Because I want to know who my students are.
Oh,
I don't teach class after class after class. I teach one class this semester, totally new group. But I take attendance because I want to build those relationships so they feel more comfortable coming to me with questions.
Well, of course, in graduate class is a little bit different.
Yeah, usually smaller too.
I do not require, but that's, again, I can't represent anybody else. But I say that if you miss the class, there are a lot of things that you're not gonna be getting. If you're not finding value in coming to the class, because it's a graduate. Graduate is almost like a profession, you're almost working in the classroom. If you don't show up, then you're almost not showing up for work. Now, sometimes, some places at work, do they track attendance? Do we swipe in and out to get to place? No. It's based on you being there. So, anyway, it's a different model. But as far as privacy, one of the ways that attendance is doing privacy some places, Top Hat does that, is location-based. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, some places do that for convenience.
We are using that in our class in chemistry. Top Hat.
Top
You can't
Hat.
register into the class unless you have Bluetooth on and you're literally in the classroom. It's based on your location.
Through Top Hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is another privacy concern, that some people say, well, you know where I am, you got my Bluetooth, you attached my Bluetooth ID with my person. So anywhere I go now, you can, so you know what I mean, like privacy.
Yeah.
I just changed my Bluetooth ID.
I mean, you could, but you cannot change your
Change
face.
the MAC address.
You can't change your face. What?
Well, the next thing on the agenda is a tour in the data center and in the lab, in the tier lab. Do you guys know what the tier lab is, for those who are not in the tier lab? Anybody with a green shirt, and some of folks are familiar with, I think
Caleb?
we have 1, 2, 3, 4 already.
Grad.
And a grad. Once you're a tier lab member, you're always tier lab member. So you graduate, you're still a tier lab. Because that's kind of one of the things we can talk about a little bit to encourage everybody to say the word and promote the idea of innovation technology. We have the idea initially was, and it's still the same, but it had evolved a little bit. It was to offer a place and an environment for students to experiment in innovative projects and research. So we used research and innovation, because even if you don't produce innovation, you can still do research that will prepare you for non-traditional experience in the classroom. Something like building an app is a simple way, an example of, build an app, but you're really going through the entire experience of requirement analysis, working with a team that is not necessarily your classmates in the classroom, working with a client that is not specific to your professor, and sometimes go out to other places outside the university and take work from them. Work as a team. There's a leadership model that we're incorporated now, so we have levels of management inside the lab, so students manage students or manage projects. The work that we're trying to do, we did, at the first round, we did chatbots, we did cloud-based in Azure, using the cognitive services to create a chatbot that will help students in IT needs. A second project was actually facial recognition. Those were two students who did used different technologies for facial recognition in my classes before they came to the lab. And in the lab, they used a different one that was more crowd analysis. So it looks at a room and then says there are 20 men and hopefully 20 female are in the technology classroom or in tier lab. So they will give you average age, engagement, they're looking at you or not, they're happy or not, sentiment analysis using facial recognition. There was no value, so at the end, we didn't produce a product, right? We produced this.
It was cool.
It was cool, but the experience of knowing how to match a person, train the system to know who the person is, actually didn't need a lot of training. Once it takes a picture of you, it knows who you are, so it's very easy now to know. But when we put it out there in the student center area, and we had, I forgot what, the Makes Festival or one of these.
Yeah, it was
festivals?
West Virginia Makes Festival.
Yeah, we saw a lot of people just staying there. We was so busy because everybody wanted to see how it's knowing that your age to the accurate. And we're using Microsoft, so we didn't program. We use Microsoft services, but in you the gender, the age, the sentiment. What else? I think those are the three things that they looked for, but it shows you just people, and then at the end of the day, it shows you how many people total came and looked at this screen, and how many people, and the breakdown of their demographics, and of course, most of them were happy, because it tells you the sentiment, And of course, when they look and they start laughing, it showed the, and when I saw the first idea, I forgot which conference I was in, and I saw people doing something like that. And I was with a colleague she was a CIO of, I forgot which school, and she started training, she was tricking the system. She was able to learn how to change her facial, to get 16 years old, and took a picture of it, sent it to her daughter. So she was probably my age, but she tricked the system, but she learned. She spent like 5-6 minutes, started doing this and this, and see the age changes up, down, until she knew exactly how to make basically she said, don't smile a lot, and you will get your age lower. And I tried, and I guess when I smile, you get those sprinkles, and it gets, Anyway, so that was another project. A third project was a queue management for if you come to the service desk, you tap to enter your name in the queue and the analysis. There was another group of students who did that. And what was the fourth
The
one?
computer layout, what's available and what wasn't,
Yes, if you notice in the mobile app,
and on the digital signage.
and
in
the digital
building.
signage, the mobile app, if you're not in Drinko and you want to see if there's a computer available, I know most of you said you do not use Drinko labs much as you used to be, but if you go there, there's a place where you can see green and red. Anything green, that means there are computers available. So that's a screenshot that we can tweet back to anybody who tweets, I couldn't find a computer in Drinko. We can tell them, here's a link that you could go to and find out before you come, because there might be computers in the back. So that's kind of how it started. Those were a few projects, and now we have 18, 20 students?
I think right at 20.
20. So now it grew from 4 or 5 students to now 20 students. And it's organized in a structure. I don't know if you planned on doing that while during the tour.
Gage is your manager, I left it up to him.
So the structure is, Gage is the lab manager, and we have different, do you want to talk a little bit about how the structure is?
Yeah, I can. So we have 3 advisors, Crystal, Ed, and Chelsea, which is not here. Then it goes down to me, the tier lab manager, and then we have 3 project managers who usually supervise up to 3 or 4 leads. And then we also have Peter as a specialist, as well as Carolyn, who just kind of assist on ideas or some sort of guidance in whatever they may be working on.
One of the things we talked about with you guys, this is the tier lab that I mentioned, and we're considering the next, we have so much for the lab in the future, we're doing them step at a time, because it wasn't something we ever done until a couple of years ago when I asked Crystal, do you think we can make this happen? Because really it's a lot of work to try to build it, and you guys now are helping a lot by taking the leadership of how to manage that. Of course, Zine is helping, and Chelsea, so we have a few people within IT, but the next...
We don't tell Ed no a lot, by the way.
Well, I appreciate it. I hope you agree also with the ideas, because the vision of that was something to increase to increase the engagement of students with the IT department, but also to put the students in almost a real-world experience. So when they go out, other than the actual technical things they learned in the classroom, they have some experience of teamwork, management, leading a project, discussing with the customer, collecting requirements, presenting and selling ideas, because some of the newer projects that we're working on using Alexa for smart dorms. Kelly's working on one. There are actually 2 projects. One of them is more for marketing, and one of them is making a smart dorm. So we're trying to leverage latest technologies. It may not be something that, let's say, for example, a vendor might be looking for, let's say, a hospital or a cloud computing. But just the idea that a student shows 3 or 4 projects that they worked on the latest and greatest. They're using cloud services, or they're using AWS, Alexa, or they worked in a team environment. They led a team over a period of time. They took a project and led the project. They marketed it. They came and presented to their clients. Like one of our clients was the resident services director, who came and said, I want to have voice-based marketing tool to answer student questions or tell students about their dorms. So the tier lab took that on within a short period of time. Some of the people may not be here, but it's a teamwork. It's not a single person. And they showed the customer the product, and hopefully we're going to wrap this up and take another one. So the next level is to go out to the departments. We already tried internally within our university, but also outside university. So the hospital needs, and they did approach us for couple of things that they want related to Power BI, analytics, and some data, or vendors. We have actually, last year, we had 2 students who were not necessarily physically working in the lab, but they were involved, they were in the Teams virtual lab, but they got to go to Microsoft to do some IoT related cyber full week of training. They graduated since, but now we're looking at trying to revisit that, but it was sponsored by a vendor. Armor Things is a company that's working closely with me on finding opportunities for our lab to take portions of their work. It's a startup company, so everything is now still like a proof of concept, but what they're thinking is find a way for them to send a small piece of the project to be done by students and come back and incorporate it in their product. And we talked today maybe a possibility of sponsoring the lab for any companies looking to sponsor the lab, or for recruitment. I see who's there. I met you last year in our IT. And if there's recruitment, this could be a potential place for recruiters to come and find the resources and people that they want to hire. So for the members, they can speak more about their experience with anybody who's interested. And for the former members also can speak to if any of that has helped, in getting their first job or in the future. Hopefully also there's some friendships are being built and relationships, but keep that in mind as if you decide to go, it's not like a big facility to show you, it's a small office, but we can also take you to the data center, which usually, if you haven't been in it, it's something that might interest you to see some of most of you, maybe you've seen servers now, but if you want to see a little larger scale, it's not a huge facility, but that's what's coming next. So if anybody's interested, this might be a time to do that. As far as reaching out for any ideas that we talked about or future ideas, you can reach me either through my personal email or through the CIO@Marshall.edu, simple way to get to me.
Yeah, we may not say no, but I think I gave you my yes, but I want to do this.
Yeah,
So part of that was I want to work with students and make sure that they get some of that professional development. I am based, originally out of College of Business, so I know as a business student I got a lot of that. And I felt like a lot of the students that I was getting working for me weren't getting those extra props. So that was part of what I really wanted to push in the tier lab. And I know Fred, we got him to job shadow down in our IT service desk area. And now he has a job, right? Where are you working now?
I'm working with Dr. Palmquist here at Marshall University, helping develop ecological simulations.
That's awesome. So, we like to share our happy stories. And we have some others. Preston works for, what is it, the Fusion Center?
Yeah.
So he was the previous.
Intelligence Fusion.
Yeah, so he's top secret now. I had to do a background check thing for him so he can get his top secret clearance. So
one of the things that Crystal added and now it's expanded is the job shadowing. The idea that if you are interested in knowing how someone's day is, I know some of you asked questions about that, but you have the option as a student in the university to come to the lab and find not necessarily a role model in that but someone, the job that you're looking for. We do not have a game design team. We do not have a game designer. I wish we could have had you shadow with them, but if, like, let's say if somebody wanted to be a network engineer, they want to go through Cisco, they can come and say, well, I want to shadow a network engineer, and Crystal will pair you up with someone, spend a little time with them and see how their day is.
we may make him pull some cables and get dirty too.
We had actually one of the first round, we had Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin Mullins.
Kevin ended up staying for a while.
He ended up,
we did the Wi-Fi expansion, so.
A lot of the Wi-Fi access points that you see are mounted by students who were part of the lab, mounted all the Wi-Fi access points that we introduced. I had some numbers of the scale of some IT. I thought if that question was asked, I could pull those about like how many computers, I think you mentioned how many computers, how many Wi-Fi access points, how many do you have at home? Usually one, maybe two, and now there's the different mesh network. We have a few thousands of each. So the scale of IT at the university is huge. So I was preparing in case we run out of questions or engagements to show you a couple of these, but I'll be willing to do that in a later, or either in the CIO forum, one of the CIO forums, to do a complete overview of the structure of IT on campus, the size and the volume of work that's being done, like how many tickets and what type of tickets, and any questions that people want. Because some students asked about that. And how is Marshall IT being managed? How is it running? Or how is the network working? How is the Wi-Fi connected? How do we have Wi-Fi everywhere? Because it's really like a small city. Right? And if you think any campus is like a small city. Ours is not as big as some other campuses, but it's big.
Well, and our department's probably one of the bigger departments on campus too.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot to run this place.
And we're still considered that we're
Make the
understaffed.
email
Everybody's wearing multiple hats.
Yeah.